more and more, that level of commitment is falling. And then peer-to-peer accountability. There's your small group, Dave. Peer-to-peer accountability is quite important. And then to focus on the results. So we're not all off doing separate things. We're all working separate things, but moving toward a common goal. So what does that look like? Effective teams are built on a foundation of trust. And you can't trust until you know people. True? You can't know people until you build relationships. So that relationship building has to start on the inside and work its way out. And then in healthy trust, we don't question each other's intent quite as much because we know what their intent is because we know them, right? And that minimizes unhealthy conflict. With trust, we're able to commit ourselves safely because we know the people around us, right? With trust, we can raise the bar of standards because we know that grace is a part of that, and we know that knowing each other and knowing God has our backs, and each one of us has the back of the other. So trust is key, and trust is built through that R word, relationships. And you're going to hear me say it over and over and over. We are very task-oriented, we Iowans, and task is good. But if it's not built in the framework of relationship, it's not very effective. So how might this focus on team partnerships shift the way we work together? Here's some examples. Here's some ways to begin. You're going to be hearing a shift in some language with some new vocabulary from me, and actually from the district, and actually from the conference. Part of that is coming through what is called Spiritual Leadership Incorporated, which is a company that Iowa Annual Conference has hired. It's a slow, patient, anybody pay attention to the sermon today? Slow, patient process of renewal built on a framework of relationships. And as we know each other, we're more effective as a team because we know each other's gifts and weaknesses. And so you're going to begin hearing words like RAD, which is reflect, adjust, and do. You heard me use another one today, glory sighting. Glory sighting is, where has God been active that you have seen? What's an experience you've had of God's action in the world? How about MAP? Council knows what MAP is, and our discipleship teams know what MAP is. Ministry Action Plan. And that's going to be a tool that we'll be using. And you're going to hear things like loving, learning, and leading. You notice those all start with L? That's an L3 culture. Loving, learning, and leading. Youth ministry team is starting with that focus, and I'm working with the program staff to format our meetings in a loving, learning, and leading format so that we're building those relationships and understanding the gifts. But here's some ways, and you guys can read, so I'm not going to read those for you. There are some ways we're starting. Now, what I said was RAD was important, right? Reflect, adjust, do. And one of the ways we RAD is we look at numbers. Now, I want to be clear, this evaluation process is not the goal. If you make feedback a goal, it'll kill it. So the data always lags the change. And it gives us an idea of how our systems are responding to that change. So every year I tell you what our worship attendance is doing, for example. That still doesn't look very good, does it? But let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, to date, if I look at January through July of 2016 and January through July of 2017, they're level. Friends, that's good news. It's not final news. We're going to have to wait and see how the rest of the year plays out, because 1 point does not a trend make. And y'all are engineers, so you know what that means. We're going to have to see how the rest of the year holds out, but that is very good news. Because there's several factors that go into worship attendance. It's not just what we do. One of the factors is that in the broader culture, church attendance is declining in general, and you heard the statistics, and that's not necessarily in our control. Also, what a regular worshiper is has changed over the last 5 years. Used to be about twice a month was pretty regular attendance. Now it's once every 4 to 6 weeks. So what's that going to do to our attendance numbers? Exactly. Now, the other part that we're trying to measure is participation of the congregation in congregational worship. That does contribute to growth or decline. And I'm telling you, in the kind of culture we're in right now, a break even is a little bit of growth. That's not all bad. So keep praying, keep inviting. We'll see how people engage in worship over the next several months. But my hope is that, in fact, we are making the turn slowly, because nothing about the church is fast, and moving towards some growth. Financials, so far so good. Remember when we went from 2016 to 2017, I know Kim Brenner said, hey, this is going to be a stretch. So far so good. We're still at about 51% of the budget, and our different ministry areas are learning how to budget, so it's going to be tighter and tighter as they learn to get better at forecasting what they need for ministry. And that's not all bad either, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Let me show you what it looks like on the income versus expenses. You see, in 2016, we were flush. Woohoo! Our financial systems turned a corner, friends. And so we took a stretch step. Now you notice for July, up through July, we're a little bit in the hole, but that is not unusual for a congregation in the summer. And usually we'll make it up by the end of the year. But I want you to bear that in mind. We're going to really be stretching, but necessarily so, because we're shifting the way we're doing things. And let me tell you why I believe that we're going to be just fine as people continue to give. We have a track record. And I'm telling you, this is one of the best track records I have ever seen for amount pledged. Look at that. The lowest is 95.6% in 2011. That means when you guys make a promise, you follow through. And there's no pressure. We don't send you bills, but that gives you the level of commitment this congregation has, at least those core people who are making estimate of givings. Anything you want to add to that, Cliff? Cliff's our stewardship chair.
I was going to duck.
No, I outed you. I outed you. So if you got any questions, you go see Cliff. He's just been outed. Yeah.
We'll be expanding on this in October. There'll be opportunities to talk then.
Yep. And I will tell you that what's coming up, a little hint of things to come. The first draft is in for the approved spending plan. That's a 2.3% increase. That's not bad, guys. If you look at the cost of living, that's about right on target for the cost of living. Finance has taken their first look at it and said this is doable. They're sweating, so y'all pray for the finance committee. The other thing you're going to see coming down the pike, we're still, remember that continuous improvement. One of the things that Stewardship's going to roll out is another capital campaign, and I'm just going to give you a heads up. And it's for some major equipment that we're going to need a little bit more proactively. One's reactive, one's proactive. If you've noticed the sound system cutting in and out, sometimes on the mic, or things don't quite go as right, we have a sound system that's analog. How many of you still have an analog TV that you use? I rest my case. Exactly. What's that? Our sound system is analog, guys. And so it's time to upgrade it. If we're talking about reaching folks between that 25 and 45 year mark, we have got to upgrade that. And so I'm sure Stewardship will roll that out along with some more details. I don't want to take their thunder, but I'm telling you, I'm in support of that campaign, and it's not undoable. It's very doable. It's very doable. Any questions on the feedback so far? We're doing okay on time, aren't we? Okay. Now it gets hard. Now the slaying gets a little rough. Engage in hands-on ministry in the community. Now, guys, we're really pretty good at doing this in many ways. But most of our folks are project-based projects. They're not building relationship. We began to build relationship, for example, with Africa University. And we continue to support Africa University as the Spirit moves. And you can go through some past things, and I can share with you all the kinds of ways we've done that. But that is a partnership with Africa University. We have now got a partnership with Women at the Well. We are one of their sponsor congregations, and we will find ways to help support our sisters in Mitchellville as they serve their time and learn to love the Lord in the process. This strategy is not just about do more. I want you to hear that, because we do a lot in the community. But this is not about doing more. This represents a shift in how we engage in that ministry. So I'll let you read that, and then you think about it and tell me what you think. What's our mission? To make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. That's our mission. How do we connect the two? Can I give you a hint? The word starts with an R. We shift to a relationally based ministry. Now that doesn't mean we stop what we're doing. I want you to hear that. But it does mean we intentionally build relationships and partnerships with people inside and outside of the church to meet needs collaboratively. Okay? Because when we treat people like projects, we dehumanize them. But we need to treat people as people who might be different than us, but certainly no less broken. Okay? So here's one of the ways that we're addressing this on a council basis, and I know Nathan can probably speak to this a little bit more. We began exploring some ways that we could be in service to the Pleasant Valley Bettendorf school districts when the big game happens in September. And as it turns out, that's all covered. But what came out of that was a conversation that said, please keep talking to us because we have other needs. At the same time, Nancy ended up, on behalf of Children's Ministry, going to talk to which school? At Jefferson. To say, what do you need? How can we partner with you? And at the same time, Thierra, is Thierra here?
Yeah.
Thierra, you went and talked to another school, right?
I talked to David DeClaus over at Armstrong.
So at Armstrong, Thierra's talking to Armstrong, Nancy's talking to Jefferson, and we're talking about how can we partner. Duh. Y'all see it? This is not a coincidence. And so what the council decided to do was to say, hey, there's something here. Let's begin to set up a conversation to see what God might be up to in this. I don't know what it's going to look like, and neither does Nathan, and neither does Pat Thornton. But we're going to pursue it until we come to an end or a partnership, one of the two. Fair enough? Do you want to add anything to that?
So just a couple words. So building relationships is going to take effort, it's going to take trying new things. So this reflect or just do. Sorry.
Yeah.
So building relationships is going to take time. For those of you that participated in the study of just walk across the room, that was equipping us to build relationships. So we've talked a lot about grace. Give grace for folks to try new things, because not all of these will have the effectiveness that we're hoping for, but we'll learn from them, and we'll do better on the next one. So give permission and grace to the folks around you to try new things. And when they don't go as planned, tell them, thanks, what did we learn? What should we try next time?
I'll tell you what the youth ministry team learned. If things don't go like you think they might, usually when we make a mistake, we look down, right? Oh, no. So here's what we're going to do. When you make a mistake, I want you to go, how fascinating. Come on, try it. Make a mistake, what do? How fascinating. There you go.
So I just add, before I give Karen the floor back, 4 out of 5 of your neighbors probably don't have a church home in LeClaire, in Pleasant Valley, in Bettendorf, and Davenport. What are we doing to move closer to our mission of making more disciples for Jesus Christ?
That's the point. That's the key. You ready? See, I told you this was getting harder. You ready for the next one? Oh, I didn't get that changed. Sorry. Okay, put on your seatbelt. Here we go. This is probably the most difficult for mainline Christians. Now, I want to tell you what this is not. This is not proposing that we stand on street corners and hand out flyers. It is not proposing that we yell, Jesus Christ is Lord, every time we walk into Target. Okay? It is not suggesting that we go door to door for the purposes of converting people. You hear all it's not? Those are old school techniques that, quite frankly, weren't ever very effective. This is not what we're suggesting. It's not suggesting that we look at the crowd and say, you're a Christian, you're not. You're a Christian, you're not. You're a Christian, you're not. You're a Christian. We don't know. We don't know until we get to know people, right? So this is not exclusive. It's not pinpointing a particular people. It's to say we don't know who is a believer and not. So the key is you build relationships. Now, if somebody says, I'm very active at Lourdes, God bless you. Good. Hallelujah. How can we help? But the fact of the matter is, most of the folks you run into are not going to say that they're an active member anywhere. They might say they're a member just to get you off their back. But they are probably not an active member. How is it that Jesus extended his hand to us? To you personally? Now think about it. That's where we start. That's where we start. What might this look like? What might it look like to develop new relationships with people we may not know? Y'all are very good churchgoers. You just sit and nod. This is one of those times I'm going to ask you to respond. What might it look like?